And as we informed, the Biden administration announced Tuesday that it has removed Cuba from the list of countries that allegedly sponsored terrorism. And to go deep into the relevance of this announcement, we contact analyst Layar Fuleihan from the People's Forum. Hi, Layan, and thank you for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you so much for having me.
For 4 years, the island has been included on this list, despite there being no evidence that would justify its inclusion. But what does this list mean?
This list has no meaning at this point. I mean, the fact that Cuba is on this list means the list has no meaning. The greatest terrorist sponsors of terrorism in the world right now, we can see them with our own eyes. It is the United States and Israel who have been massacring the people of Gaza, the children of Gaza, for over 15 months. The fact that Cuba is included on this list just goes to show that the list is a political tool used by the United States to try to isolate the countries that it is waging hybrid war against. So the fact that Biden took so long to take Cuba off the list, it's a great thing that Cuba is off the list, but Biden should have done it the first day that he came into office.
The President Miguel Díaz-Canel assured today that this measure has had a high cost for the country. How does that translate into the real impacts of this list on the lives of the Cuban ordinary people?
Well, this list adds another layer to the very intense blockade that has been imposed on the people of Cuba for over 60 years. This list makes it an extra level of difficulty for Cuba to be able to make any financial transactions in the international sphere and to work with any other entities in any kind of exchange in purchasing necessary items like food and medicine. And it creates a level of intimidation because the United States is indicating with this list that they also will take action against those who do work with Cuba. And it's, of course, very complex and very varied in the economic and legal spheres, but it creates an environment in which other parties and other countries think twice about making exchanges with Cuba because they do not want to incur the consequences that the United States would impose on them. This is a criminal level of blockade. It is designed to cut off the Cuban economy from the global economy. And it has already been said very clearly since the beginning that this is a tool used by the United States to try to starve the Cuban people into submission. It has not worked for decades.
Precisely, and also the removal of Cuba from the U.S. unilateral list of countries sponsors of terrorism, allegedly, is a victory, of course, for the Cuban people, but the struggle continues. What does this decision mean just a few days before the inauguration of President Donald Trump, who actually re-included Cuba on this list on his previous administration? And also let's recall that the blockade is yet very much in force. So what does that mean?
Well, we can take this as a victory for the Cuban people and also a sign that the sustained grassroots pressure in the campaign to remove Cuba from the list from the peoples of the world inside the United States, all who stand in solidarity with the Cuban people and across the Americas and across the world, there has been a sustained campaign to remove Cuba from the list and lift the blockade. This is one victory on that path, but we know that the struggle does not end here. We have to continue advocating for the lifting of the entire blockade. It is in no one's interest to have this blockade. It is not in the interest of the United States people for there to be a blockade. Cuba is a neighboring country with much to share with us and much to exchange, and it is the right of neighborly people to be able to have international solidarity and to exchange. So the struggle will continue. Biden, in a very cowardly move, waited to the last week of his administration to do what he could have done the first day that he came into office. In fact, he could have done it with no real opposition because it was a policy of the Obama administration. The Obama administration was moving insufficiently, but moving towards more openings with Cuba. Biden could have said, we will undo what the Trump administration did, but he did not. He kept all of the Trump additional coercive sanctions. He kept Cuba on the list, which Trump was the one to first bring Cuba on. And he waited until this moment. Now, Trump is coming back into office, and we will continue advocating that Cuba remain off the list and that we go forward with the lifting of the blockade. But of course, Biden has basically left it open for Trump to make a decision before Cuba can really recover economically from this brief moment of being off of the list. So we hope that Trump does not return Cuba to the list. But we have to notice that Biden should have done this 4 years ago.
What's the role that the activism from the US is going to play in these moments of uncertainty ahead of the upcoming new government in the US for Cuba?
Well, the people of the United States are going to continue calling for friendship and cooperation with the people of Cuba, with Cuba, with the country of Cuba, our neighboring country. There is a level of consciousness around Cuba that is very important, that is also continuing to grow. The United States has isolated itself from its own population and from the world population over the past year in unprecedented ways. Now the White House is synonymous with genocide. And the blockade, what's happening to the people of Cuba, is also a form of genocide, not through bombs, but through sanctions and through a blockade. The people of the United States are waking up to this reality, and the struggle in solidarity with Cuba will continue to grow.
Thank you, Lion, for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you very much for having me.